Kristen, welcome. How's it going over there?
So good.
This is
So good.
crazy. So I've been wanting to do a podcast for a long, long time. And when I was at Epcot at the Festival of Arts, I happened to bump into you. And ironically, then we bumped into each other on the plane on the way home from
That
Orlando.
was actually really funny.
That was a
Yeah.
trip. Yeah. I think you sat behind my screaming kids on the flight home. So I'm sorry about that. Hopefully they didn't kick your seat too often.
I have 4 kids, Sam.
Okay. So you
That
can
count
deal
does
with that.
no longer affects me.
Awesome. But when we started chatting and I learned more about you, and I wanted to have someone I could chat with about fun stuff in
Yeah.
the industry. I thought,
Nerd
let's
out.
give this a shot. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there, and I wanted to do something a little bit different, just to give some variety, but just to kind of keep up with like what I'm passionate about, which is
Of course.
obviously the artwork and all like
Yeah.
the creativity that goes into building these places, but most importantly just creating experiences for families to have fun together, right? So I kind of wanted to do some kind of show. I don't know if it could be weekly. I'd love to have it be weekly, but we'll see how this one goes. This is
Like
kind of like our
featurette.
this is like our
Featurette
first little
things.
test.
Yeah.
And I thought the first show would be talking about Disneyland reopening, but then Disney had to go and pull a fast one and drop Disneyland Forward. Was your mind blown?
I think it definitely caught me by surprise, only because I've been reporting for the past year about all the money they're losing every day, and how much they're struggling. I was just expecting everything to be cut for a really long time, until we kind of got caught up. So even throwing the idea out there that this could maybe happen, that this is something we're thinking about, that we've actually thought about this, and that this is in the works if somebody would let us do it, that part blew my mind. Like the art and the amazing parts of the Imagineer and the work, that goes into this, of course, always. But the fact that this was even a possibility at this time that we're in right now, that part blew my mind.
And there wasn't even
I
a
was
peep.
shocked.
Usually you hear something, some kind
Mhm.
of scuttlebutt about anything. No, this came out of nowhere. In fact,
Yeah, but a friend of mine told me that just told her that it was like a ring of truth. It was like 4 or 5 people that no one was saying anything.
yeah, well, that's good. I
She's
mean,
like, this wasn't a department. This was like a handful of people that knew, and that was it.
man, incredible. Like I would have just been blown away by the mere mention, like you said, like, hey, this might happen sometime, because
Yeah.
up until obviously when they released this info, when people would talk about that third park, it's us, you kind of just roll your eyes. You're like, yeah, you're dreaming. There's no way, especially now, right? Like we don't even know if we're going to get anything in the
We
near
don't even know if we're
future.
going to get 75% of our parks back of what we were experiencing before all of
Exactly.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy exciting. It really takes me back to Disneyland before they had California Adventure,
EPA.
even like to
Yeah.
like the late 80s when they started talking about Port Disney, when they started talking about Westcott in the early
Westcott.
90s. Yeah,
Mhm.
all that stuff. It's kind of like it. I had a flashback when I saw this expansion, how it was going towards like the west side of the park, because I remember specifically in 1989 when they opened up Disney MGM Studios. I thought maybe they could, because it was Strawberry Fields then, just to the left of the
Yes.
park, just north
Yes.
of the Disneyland Hotel. I'm like,
Yep.
they could probably fit a small MGM Studios right there. And I remember I even drew it. And I even drew a pathway that went from Bear Country across the street right there
Over
to
to
this.
MGM
So when I saw
or
that
post
that
MGM.
was kind of happening with this artwork, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's kind of bizarre. But it was never good enough. It was never like, it's just not big enough. It's too much of a disconnect. But what they did here with having 2 expansions like that, the California Adventure
I
one
agree. Yeah.
and the other one,
Yeah.
and they blew my mind by having those 2 expansions meet each other.
Well, having those converge, I mean, quite frankly, that's the only way this was going to work, because
Right.
there's too many sort of broken off pieces here and there that they could utilize without really like having to get the county involved, the city involved,
Yeah.
big expansions of taking over existing hotels and properties. So without having to do that, you really had to figure out a way to integrate all of these existing
Right.
little parcels and things that you have and literally work with what you have.
And
I
using
mean,
that land smart, Do you know what I mean? Like,
So
because
smart.
we don't have
So
Orlando
smart. Like,
size.
just I know we're gonna look at it, but like just that part going up to like Mickey and Friends parking structure. Like
I know.
that
Well,
was such a genius use of land.
and the artwork, my first thought was like, wow, how incredibly awesome and vague is that artwork?
Okay, so I have a question
Yeah.
for you from like the inside track part of it. So, as an artist, if Disney comes to you with something like this, it's not like they came to them and said something like generic. Like they must have had pretty specific parameters as to like we want this to look like this and we want this to look like this, but generic, but that's what's
Yeah.
there,
It's a
right?
skill
Because you
set to
have
make
to
it
have some
vague.
sort of specific guidance in order to even like
100%.
make it vague, right?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a feeling that it looks like a Greg Pro type of art, which he's like my idol. He's amazing. He does most of like most of the kind of like overview kind of artwork of any kind of future projects.
Okay.
Um, I have a feeling that he was given an outline that we want to have a Neverland area,
X, Y, and
uh,
Z.
a
Yeah.
Zootopia area, like kind of like, you know, a list of things that you want it to look like. However, there's parameters of like, don't make it obvious. Like if there was
Mhm.
floating rocks from Pandora in there, everyone
Mhm.
knows exactly what that is.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the
You
stuff
can't
that's
make
in there,
something that's so dead on. Yeah.
yeah, this might be the perfect time to dive in. I'm going to share my screen.
I know. I want to see.
Let's do it.
I want to get into it now.
We're going to be
Well, the
really high
funny
tech.
thing too, I think, is the fact that on the webpage, if you look at Disney Forward on the webpage, they even mention those specific lands that they're talking about being inspired by or quote
Right.
unquote gonna use, you know, existing properties in other parks to do
Yeah.
the expansion. So it's interesting.
It's super interesting because it also reminds me of, do you recall right after California Adventure opened, there was a website that Disney put out called, I think it was called thirdpark.com or Disneyland thirdpark.com.
No, how do I not know this?
And there was pictures of Pooh's Honey Hunt from Tokyo. It had certain kind of like very vague things, but it was showing artwork to wow it.
Okay.
This announcement is so strategic, it's not even funny.
Oh, I know.
In a
I
good
mean,
way.
what's your thought on like the political version? I mean, not the political version, but that political side of it. Like, it's no accident that Disney leaks this before they're actually
Oh, there's a
gonna go to the
purpose.
city,
There's
right?
totally a
Because
purpose.
who isn't wowed by this, and who isn't thinking like, oh my god, here we are, like a year with no park, and then thinking we're never going to get our park back, and now we have these possibilities. You know, like what city is going to be able to be like, you know what? No, we've decided we're not going to do that.
Do you recall Westcott 2000? What that was?
So I know the story.
But there's a community group. There was a community group called Westcott 2000, which I was a member of. I think I was 14.
Oh God, how funny. Okay.
This is amazing. And this is where I cut to a picture of me and Jack Lindquist at the Disneyland Hotel because they had an expo. Because, you know, there's no World Wide Web yet. So they invited the community over saying, hey, this is early 90s, maybe even 91, 92. But they had an expo with models, concept art, everything in the grand ballroom for Westcott Center. And because they were getting a lot of heat from the citizens of Anaheim, because, you know, they're already complaining about fireworks every night at 9:30. They're complaining about fireworks smoke, traffic, anything that they don't want in their community. It's like, my thought is, well, sorry, Disneyland was there first, right? There's nothing here before Disneyland.
I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah.
I've seen all the comments online so far just from this alone.
Yeah.
And the people that are like, I live right behind Mickey and Friends parking structure and I don't want that.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Like,
but don't you think now after the pandemic, the
Disneyland.
city and I think the citizens feel a little bit different of like, they see what happens when it's gone for a year. So I think there's like a new appreciation, a new like, maybe even there's like they were scared a little bit because like, well, what happens?
Well, what happened?
Nothing's
Exactly.
guaranteed.
That is the question you kind of have to ask yourself. What happens when Disney isn't there to sustain your community and do all the things that they do? And I'm sure there's tons of things as a resident that maybe isn't convenient. But when you move there and you live as close as some of these people that were commenting, there's no way you don't know that you're living next to Disneyland. Like you know that you're living next to like the #1 theme park in the world.
Right, exactly.
So I feel like, how can you complain about them using their space You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't feel like that's a very valid complaint.
You know what's
Um,
really weird too is like
yeah.
one of the biggest complaints was the icon. It was like, the Westcott version of Spaceship Earth. It was like this
Oh,
a
yeah.
gold version of it.
I do remember that, yeah.
They were ticked off that it was too big. It's like, what? Like they wanted to spend $3 billion, and DCA didn't even cost a full 1 billion, right? So we got a lot less, and then after they kind of hyped this all up. But
Yeah.
so Westcott 2000 was a group created with the purpose of getting people excited. And they get people excited by showing
To get that
models and
community on
images
board.
and get
Yeah.
support. Like
Mhm.
they don't want people protesting saying, no, we
Mhm.
don't want this in our town.
Mhm.
This is kind of similar to that. It's kind of like, hey, everyone, get on board with
Mhm.
expansion.
Mhm.
At the same time, nothing's been decided on what they're building,
Of
right?
course.
Even though
Yeah.
like that kind of looks like Neverland, it kind of looks like Moana. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
And that's the part that's super fun to think about, like the
Okay, point
speculation.
some of that stuff out. I wanna go over some
All
of
right,
that.
let's do this. Let's go back to here. High tech over here. All right. Well, first of all, let's just talk about the concept that there's an expansion for California Adventure right here, and there's an expansion for Disneyland, which I'm assuming cuts through Bear Country.
That's what it
Sorry,
looks
I'm
like.
old. Critter
Yeah,
Country.
that's what it looks like.
And then, like I said, the part that blows me away is how there's going to be a second set of main entrances right there where they connect. So
Okay,
traffic
I
flow
didn't see
along.
that part, so show me that part. That's the part I didn't see that. I saw the
Yeah.
monorail, I saw all
So
of that.
if you look at this, would be the area where Rainforest Cafe is and the
Oh,
AMC and
yeah.
ESPN.
Uh-huh.
Uh, this would be the entrance on the left to the DCA expansion. And
Oh,
then the area on
wow.
the right is the Disneyland expansion. So the speculation part I have on my end isn't so much what are they going to build? It's like, how are they going to make this make sense? My thoughts are there's no way they expand on the California theme for the California expansion, for the DCA expansion. You know what I mean? Like clearly they're not, because there's
Well, and
nothing.
clearly they've shown now that they don't have to, right?
Right. They
You
definitely don't
have
have to.
Avengers Campus, that's not California. I mean, you have Pixar Pier, that's not necessarily California. They did with what they had, but
Yeah.
I feel like they could kind of, I don't feel like they have to do that anymore.
It's
So,
funny that you say that, because I could do a whole podcast just about the DCA and the theme and how it's evolved through the years. So I'm still a
no,
true
it's
believer
evolved
that
a ton.
it
And
makes
thank God
sense
it's
still.
evolved, honestly, if we're being honest, like thank God it's evolved. Cause like I
Yeah.
remember going to that when it first
Oof.
opened. And
Yeah.
I
So
remember
what's
thinking
cool
like,
is
man, this is rough.
I'm hoping that the expansion for DCA and the expansion for Disneyland makes sense, not necessarily to the park they're expanding from, but to each other, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it looks like here. It should make sense. Like, why is this attraction or why is this land in Disneyland's
So
expansion
what
versus
I'm assuming
DCA's?
is that they're going to set it up similar to how Epcot has the international gateway versus the front gate, right? So you'd
Yeah,
enter, you tell your friends,
exactly.
hey, we're going to meet at the East Gate for
Right. It just makes
DCA
it
this
easier for the
morning.
guests too, and especially
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
hotels. But speaking of the hotels, I was a little disappointed that they didn't plan on bulldozing these buildings down. The Paradise Pier Hotel, which, hello, there's not even a Paradise Pier anymore, and the
I
Disneyland Hotel, I really think those gotta go. And then you
No,
have this
I love
entire,
that hotel. I strongly disagree with
oh,
you.
really?
Oh, I got a hard pump the brakes on that.
Oh
My
man,
grandfather, I have so much nostalgia, like family wise, caught up in
all
that
right, I
hotel.
respect
It
that.
would be so hard for me, like blasphemy, Sam.
I
Um,
respect that, but coming from a place of
Pier
like,
Hotel, I'm on board though.
picture this
That
long,
thing needed to go.
picture this long rectangle of empty space of a blank canvas. That's
Yeah,
how I think of it. Like,
yeah,
let's agree that the Paradise Pier Hotel could go.
yes,
And then
yes.
that's like a whole other big chunk that you could just do, something else. And just, I don't think that kind of thing should dictate the creative on whatever land they
No,
want to build,
I know
right?
what you're saying. Yeah, I
I
know what
mean,
you're saying.
it's just like, it sticks out like a sore thumb, like
It
kind of how
does,
it
and
does
you know
now.
what? I have to believe that they would find some way to integrate that better because it's Disney. They never are just going to plop something down in the middle of somewhere. So I do feel like they'll have a plan, but
Yeah.
how? I mean, that hotel it's really tall
Yeah.
and it's got like no character. So how do you make
No.
that blend in?
Yeah, and you don't really. And that's what's so cool about changing like the zoning by building like, right now it says you can only build a hotel here, or you can only build parking lot here, or you can only build a theme park here.
Yeah,
Now they're
yeah.
kind of like mushing it all together where you could kind of layer things up and have maybe some more parking hidden. Um, Hotels are kind of like placed where that's one thing that was cool about Westcott too. Westcott had hotels integrated into
In the
like the
park.
buildings. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would hope that that kind of idea would kind of survive. But going through this, I mean, I have to assume
Well,
that's
that's
either
the
a
lagoon,
Neverland
right?
or Moana, right?
Oh, okay, yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think, I don't know. Um,
It looks very Moana-ish. Yes.
you have, I wish this was more high res, but this
Well,
kind of
I'm
looks
sure
a
it's
little
on purpose
tangled-ish.
to not be high res.
I mean, it looks like floating lanterns, so I don't know, but that's the thing. It's specifically vague on purpose.
So I mean, those were things that were mentioned, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
Tangled was mentioned,
Hmm.
Zootopia was mentioned, like all of those things are existing on that website for Disneyland Forward. So it's not out of the realm of the conversation because
Right.
those are things that are specifically mentioned.
Right. Right.
Um,
So you kind of just, plugging in all pieces together.
mhm,
And that's kind of like the latest and greatest that they're doing in Tokyo. So it's fresh concept art that's exciting that people haven't really seen yet.
mhm.
But
Is that the Neverland like lagoon back there?
yeah,
Okay.
you can see that one pavilion ballroom right there too.
Mhm.
And even the new DVC tower is up there too. So this is definitely up to date. But here's my problem with, no offense, keeping the Disney Hotel. Say this area is Wakanda at this main entrance, right?
Uh-huh.
You have this totally immersive area, but then there's like this 1960s building right there. It's like it kind of
Yeah,
takes me out of it.
but it'll be like Batu. It'll be so that you're in Galaxy's Edge and those rock formations are so high up and that forced perspective,
That's true.
you're not going
Well,
to see.
definitely right here. Like that's why there's so much rock, because especially over here, they're gonna need to hide those power lines because
Oh yeah.
they're probably
Not
not
only
gonna.
that, but some of those buildings on that side over there, some of those hotels that they would look right into that.
Yeah, it's just crazy interesting. Look at.
So my question is,
Mhm.
where you're obviously going to have a second monorail stop.
No, I don't think that's changing at all. If anything, I've always kind of thought that I wish that
I wish
they
they would go
put
into
one
the
at the Grand
hotel.
Californian.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't.
What'd you think of the old hotel plans that had that it was like really like 5-star hotel that was supposed to be, they shut down ESPN Zone and everything
Uh-huh.
just for that, and then it didn't happen.
I'll
It-
be honest, I really was never on board with that anyway. I
yeah.
I don't I don't feel like Anaheim is the place for that. When you go to Florida, you have that space. You can build Four Seasons and you can build Rivieras that feel like they are very far removed, and
Hmm.
people are going to pay the $800 a night standard room rate.
For sure.
I don't feel like Anaheim can pull that off. I don't. I feel like it was a blessing in disguise that that was blocked because I feel
Yeah.
like that would have just been a lot for a space that I don't know that there was demand for it.
Well, what's super interesting about that expansion is they never even announced the name for that hotel.
Mm-mm. Yeah,
They just said like new future hotel, very like
yeah.
upscale. And
Oh,
if
and they
you,
mentioned that it was going to be like 4 diamond. Like they mentioned it
yeah,
was going to be
this
like
is
the
the
highest
bragging
plan.
rights, right?
Which
For the
right now
billionaires.
people complain about paying for Grand Cal.
Yeah.
And you're talking 740 a night.
That'll make Grand California like the all-star, like when you have a place like that right next to it. But
Right?
if you look at the map of it, like a ground plan, because it looked like it was like a V-shaped that was like
I
right
vaguely remember. Yeah, I
off.
remember I just remember it cutting into that area.
Right. Well, what's
Yeah.
interesting is it looks like it's half of an X shape, which made me think that if they were to build the other part of it, like the phase 2 of it, that would be right where the Disneyland Hotel is. So I think they didn't give a name for it because it was the new Disneyland Hotel.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Because like I think if there is like the most upscale hotel on property, they would want that to be called the Disneyland Hotel,
They
which is,
incorporated into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when you look back at the old resorts that they wanted to add during Westcott or whatnot, they had like they had the Disney Hotel, and then they had the Magic Kingdom Hotel. So they had
Mhm.
other things that were trying to squeeze in there. So they've been, I even think they could put a new hotel in like where the East Esplanade is. Like if
Yeah.
you've been to Tokyo,
No,
like,
yeah.
and not all of them
Especially
have to be
because you have
huge.
that whole backstage area right there
Mhm.
that is really underutilized. Because I
Yeah,
feel like every time I pass it, it's just full of a bunch of stuff parked there. I
yeah,
feel like they could easily use that. Like, hey, I'm someone who goes to the Hojo with my kids all the time.
Coach
that
is awesome.
hotel is so convenient. And if not as convenient or more convenient than the Disneyland hotel is, because I can go straight over to the harbor entrance
It's
and
right
walk right in
there.
the gate.
Yeah.
I don't have to go through downtown, nothing. So the fact that Disney doesn't have a hotel on that side is a little shocking to me.
It's only a matter of time, I think. What's it, man, we
Well,
could go,
now would be the time, wouldn't it?
I
Now
would
would
think
be the
so.
Monopoly game to play.
Well, it's two things. It's like I want DCA to be able to have room to expand, and if there's any room left to expand in DCA, it's definitely that weird odd corner of
That weird
Hollywood.
corner.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I
It
love the
sounds like
Hollywood
they're
Boulevard,
talking
but
about
that
that
part,
Toy Story parking lot and
right?
having that be mixed use, right?
Mhm.
So here's my problem with that
Okay.
is that I feel like, first of all, I've always felt like Garden Walk should be Disney's because I feel
Hmm.
like, why do you not have that and then have like some sort of crazy bridge that you walk over, right? Like a place that you feel
I
like,
feel
go
like
have
that's
seats
been the
on here.
plan, but like if there's a time to buy it, it would be now, right? Because there's
Yeah,
actually
and
people there
actually,
now.
Garden Walk has been holding their own during this whole thing. Like I went to
Wow,
events there during this. They were actually doing pretty well during this
that's
entire
awesome.
shutdown.
Well, those
Yeah,
new
there was quite a
hotels
few
are
people
where it's
walking
at.
around.
Those cool bars
What?
up on the roof, those new hotels that they just opened up right there.
Oh yeah, and I've been to the JW multiple times now
Wow.
since that's opened. So it's it's a good little area. So I mean, if they use that Toy Story lot area for a mixed use that they're talking
Hmm.
about, my only problem with that is you are going to have to make it so enticing because
Right.
who is going to walk all that way unless you really have something someone wants? And if
Well,
your world
you've
of
been to Disney
Disney and
Springs.
all your stuff that people are used to is in downtown, what is going to move that crowd? Do you know
Well,
what I mean?
people go to Disney Springs. Isn't it similar to that?
Sam, really? Really? No,
Yeah.
our downtown sucks. Like, I
No,
mean,
no, I'm saying this new area that they're building, the Toy Story lot.
well, no, because I don't think that they have A, the space, and B, I don't even think it looked like it was being developed like that. Like Disney Springs is kind of I feel like it's its own experience.
Oh my
You can
goodness.
go and there's like the fountains and I mean, not that you do that stuff every time, but
Hmm.
there's live music, and then around another corner there's another live music, and there's a bandstand, and then there's a store, and there's food places, and that place is bustling.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen again.
Okay. But I feel like I don't feel like it's as like intricate as Disney Springs. Do you know what I mean? Like Disney Springs, you can get lost in Disney
For
Springs.
sure. I just saw it for the first time this January, and I had no idea it was that big. Like it's a
Yeah, no,
city,
it's
right?
big. It's its own little city. Yeah.
So I think what's going to get people here is that it's their new Disneyland hotels, right? So you have new resorts, that's part of it. But the picture that they showed on the website was things like Jacques Lindsay's Hangar Bar. So it's themed
Okay. And if
restaurants,
you had
it's
like a
that type of stuff.
yeah, like an adventurers club or something, that would be
Oh, I
awesome.
hope
Oh,
so.
you'd have
Um,
that.
and so I have a feeling I haven't really figured out what's what here, but this is supposed to be the Toy Story lot.
I mean, when I look at it, I just see a hotel. It reminds me, like for at first glance when I saw it, it reminded me of like how the boardwalk is structured
Oh
in
yeah.
Disney World.
Yeah,
You
you
know
can see the
how it's
wings.
like those hotels, and it is a cute little boardwalk that you walk, and there's cute little bakeries to stop in and places to go over on that side. But I feel like just like that area in Disney World, if you're staying at the boardwalk, it's awesome because it's like your own little downtown over there. But
Hmm.
if you're not staying there, I don't
It's
know
not a
how much you go
destination.
out of your way.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they bought that a long time ago when it was a strawberry field, and it's been a parking lot ever since. But you knew that eventually they're going to do something with it.
Of course. Flat land in Anaheim?
But
No.
what? But I think when I heard that the grand total of acreage they had there was 90 acres, that is the size. That could be a decent theme park because DCA
Sorry.
opened at
The
55 acres.
Toy Story lot is 90 acres?
I think it could be. I think with like if they get one more residential area there, they would have 90 acres there.
Wow. It does not look like that.
Yeah,
I've parked there. We have a convention that we go to multiple times, and I've parked there for that.
it's
And
a big lot.
it is a big lot, but 90 acres. I mean, that is a huge space. They could do a lot with that. But if you're talking about hotels, they would take a lot of that space, already.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
mean, at least they're getting smart with the use of the land. So I think that's kind of cool.
yeah.
And
And
it'd
like
have
I said
to
in
be
the
like a new,
beginning,
it's almost like it's the Americana, right? It'd be the
yeah,
Grove. It'd be
yeah,
that kind of upscale
yeah,
level,
that
which is
vibe.
which is definitely higher than downtown Disney. It has to take it to the next notch.
It's funny because I don't think a lot of people realized how much downtown Disney was sort of just this afterthought until if you were a local, the pandemic hit and all you had was downtown Disney.
Yeah.
And then you go in there and you realize like, wow, there's really nothing here. Like we don't have anything. Like we have a few restaurants.
Well, you had House of Blues, but it
shops.
closed. You had ESPN Zone and it closed. You had the movie theaters and it closed. So it's like,
yeah, I mean, you didn't have a lot of options. And I think that seeing, like we were saying at the beginning, like seeing this is kind of mind blowing because it gives you the possibility like, oh my God, this could be like a real destination. Like not just the parks, not just, let's eat in downtown Disney or grab a drink. Like this could be an actual thing that you're like, you know what, we're going to go there for the evening. We're going to just go to the downtown for the evening. We're going to walk around. Like, I don't feel like that was a possibility before. I feel like we went to the parks at night and walked around as pass holders, but I don't know that I ever just went to downtown Disney as like a destination.
Downtown Disney,
excited for it.
Yeah, downtown Disney's always been more of like a exit through the gift shop on your way out, or somewhere to spend money on the way in or out.
Yeah,
it was never like let's go there, but people needed their fix during the pandemic, so they went, and it made people feel better. You were smart enough to go on the right side, on the harbor side. I always waited in line like it was terrible how waiting so long to get in just for downtown Disney.
Once I did that, I think I parked over in the Simba lot once or twice.
Yeah.
And then once I figured out the harbor side, I was like, never again.
Yeah.
It was just too much, and I was going there too often. Yeah. Like I can't sit there for 45 minutes
and
wait for this line. This is crazy. And now on the weekends, it's like 2 hours.
Yeah, I've waited way too long for that. But I will say this though, I got pretty familiar with that lot. So when they announced the expansion, it's kind of like, okay, I'm actually really familiar with this.
You're familiar with it.
It's a good size. My biggest takeaway from it though is not so much that it's a third park, because obviously it's not a third park. But it's the new concept of flipping everything upside down and going, okay, you know what? It's expansions for DCA and Disneyland. They're not necessarily part of that park. They're their own thing. They're going to find a way to charge for this place as if it was a third park. So they don't even have to build a third park, and they're going to start getting some revenue like it is, right?
Revenue from it, yeah.
And what's anything that we get from Tokyo, I always like beg for Tokyo scraps. Let them do the R&D for any attraction and clone it over here as soon as you can, right? The Beauty and the Beast ride, anything, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
My thing is I just want the areas to make sense in relation to where it's at, whether it's with each other or whether the park gets expanded from. That's my biggest thing.
That's the hard part for us, because when you have a lot of space, you can figure out transitions. But when you have a very limited amount of space, those transitions become really tricky. And I feel like what happened for us in Galaxy's Edge was only because we had that space. So they were able to like walk you through Bear Country and
they shrunk the river.
Formed, right? Yeah. But if you're talking about like Moana and then Tangled and then Neverland and then, Wakanda, like you could transition from those places, but it's never going to be like when you go to Animal Kingdom and you suddenly are in Pandora. But
that's the fun challenge.
The room for that.
To design those kind of transition is the really fun challenge. Like even when they were talking about, this is really off topic, but when they were talking about a Wizard of Oz area for where Galaxy's Edge ended up.
I heard about that like once. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. There's transitions that could organically happen when you think about it, where on the Frontierland side of things, it transitions into the Kansas side of Oz. And then on the Fantasyland side, it transitions into the Emerald City. So there's really clever things that you could do to make it make sense.
Oh, totally. And I know that they'll do those things because I have no doubt about that. My concern is always like, there's a difference in transitions with 50 feet versus 20.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a big difference when you have a lot of space you could work that into versus when it's like, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this.
But that's what's cool about
just for the sake of, we want all these things in there so we can, charge for this potential expansion.
Well, that's what's cool about Disneyland versus Disney World. Disneyland is super intimate.
Everything.
Yeah, well, there's
Besides
that.
the fact that I've been to Disney World 3 times during this pandemic, so not everything, but mostly
Hey, at
everything.
least that one's open. But as far as
Yeah.
like intimate pathways and walkways, it's not about just everything being big for the sake of being big.
Oh, of course not. I
But that's
agree.
what's so cool
100%.
about this expansion and using the space wisely, is that I think they're still going to have intimate pathways that make it feel like it is still at it's a
Mhm,
Disneyland place, right?
mhm.
That's one thing that I think that happened with California Adventure, was it was so wide open
So big.
spaces,
Yeah.
and that when even worse, that people weren't going right away, that it looked even more empty than it really was, just because they made it so wide. Like they were building Epcot. Epcot is so
Mhm.
wide open and spread out, and they built the pathways at California Adventure just in the same way. And it's like one of those little things that just did not feel like Disneyland, and
Well,
it had
that's
enough going up against it, right? So then here's
right.
this subtle stuff that doesn't feel right.
Totally. And the intimacy of Disneyland really does huge things for that experience. Because if you grew up with Disneyland, right? And that's really all you know. And then you go to Disney World and you think,
Mind blowing.
God, it's gorgeous here and
Mhm.
it's huge, right? But you do I mean, I went there as a young girl, so I kind of have like this progression of like when I went as a young girl and then through my teenage years and then as an adult, like kind of knowing that difference between the two parks and experiencing them. But even now when I go back, I'm like, this is gorgeous. This is amazing. I love being here, but it's not home.
Of
You know
course.
what I mean? There's like that element that's missing, like the
Walt,
home cooked
that's what's
meal
missing.
smell, right? Like that intimacy of home. And
Hmm.
that's what Disneyland is, I think, for most of us. But
Yeah.
it's funny because if you talk to friends of ours that are Disney World people, and then they come here and they've never been
Yeah, what
here,
do they say?
it's so small. Like
Yeah.
you're so squished and
Hmm.
everything's so tiny. And for them, they don't feel that connection, like that nostalgia, because they didn't, what they grew up on was the big brother, right? Like the big version of everything. So then to come here, it probably does feel like congested and your walkways are so small and your queues are so tiny. And
Hmm.
I get that part. But I do think that there's something to be said about like the feel of that and
Hmm.
what that feels like versus going to California Adventure, right? You don't have that intimacy. You don't have that like nostalgia for things because you're not in this like little homey place. You're in a really big space and they have to sort of make it over the top when
Right.
they do things, which is awesome. Like that's a great element of so many of the parks, like these really cool, expansive projects. And like Avengers Campus, I can't wait because I know that that's going to be one of those wow moments,
Hmm.
right? It's going to be amazing. And that wouldn't fit over in Disneyland because it would feel out of place because Disneyland is so intimate. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know you, but even in Galaxy's Edge, I feel like that. I feel like it's very like sort of like close. Like the rocks are close, things are close. Like yes, it's open and yes, there's wide walkways and places to go, but I do feel like that's built a little bit like, you're in this place.
You know what's
Um,
so funny? I'm glad you mentioned Galaxy's Edge. When I was thinking about the themes that would be perfect for this expansion, for both
yes,
the Disneyland one and the DCA one, it'd be perfect? A Marvel section and a Star Wars section.
of course.
And of course, we just
It's
opened
already
Galaxy's
done.
Edge. We just built it. We just shrunk the
Yeah.
size of the river and, blew out
Well,
the
it's
back of
funny. Someone
Frontierland.
commented that and said that. Somebody said, "Oh God, if you knew you were even going to possibly do this, why would you have not put Galaxy's Edge over
Oh,
there?"
it'd be perfect. But we got Galaxy's Edge. We can't complain. I still love it, but it
I
would have
love
been, it would have made, because I
Galaxy's
always
Edge. I
thought
love it
if,
more than I ever expected I would.
it's a thing with like, because I wanted to have like a third park that was Star Wars and Marvel. Like, I can't think of a more popular park with those two
Yeah,
IPs
yeah,
smushed together. Like not that they shoehorned it in, but I didn't want them to have to change because we have no more space, right? I don't want them
yeah.
to have to level some stuff just because we're going to squeeze in this huge 14-acre land.
Right, right.
Like if you knew, and they didn't know, right? It's just ironic though that,
Yeah.
but luckily now they get to populate it. But my question now is, okay, if you're going to drop in all these Fantasyland type elements into these expansions, what does this mean for a Fantasyland expansion? Or more importantly, what does this mean for Tomorrowland expansion?
The
The
fact that
poor Rocker
they
Rod track.
that it's crickets, nothing for Tomorrowland at
Yeah,
all.
that's what's so weird.
But is
Okay,
it? because you've had that Star Wars launch bay there. You've then had like some Marvel stuff sort of kind of mixed
Yeah,
in.
that
Like
went away
you had
really
some,
fast. Those were really nice inside the character locations.
yeah. So I mean, you kind of had them testing things out, I think. And I don't know like
That's exactly what it was.
where are they gonna go with that stuff? You know what I mean? I mean, you have Space Mountain, which is probably never gonna be gone. Like you're
I
always
hope
gonna have
not.
Space
No, I think they should just clean slate all of Tomorrowland except for Space Mountain.
Mountain. I mean, yeah, Star Tours just
Well, my
I
thoughts on
love
that
Star
is now
Tours.
with
I love
Galaxy's
Star
Edge,
Tours, but like now that
me
you have
too.
Galaxy's Edge, how does that work?
Yeah, I always say I always keep my toys in the proper toy box, and it just doesn't
Right?
make sense to
Just
have
take
my Star
Star
Wars
Tours
toys.
and like
Well,
move it.
it's like having a Haunted Mansion land behind Toontown, but the
Yeah.
Haunted Mansion is still over there. Like it's just,
It
I
would
don't know.
it would be strange. Yeah. And it'd be crazy to move it, but I mean, would it be? I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's funny that
You
you
think
mentioned
of
that.
crazier things.
I actually thought like we don't know what's happening with phase 2 of Avengers, right? They did say at D23 there was that massive Avengers,
Oh yeah.
which would
Yeah.
be amazing, but
Hmm.
we don't know. We don't know if what's still happening. They haven't really decided on anything like that. But I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, if Star Tours does go away, there is a Star
Oh,
Tours ride in Hong Kong that is Iron Man, which I think they should call Stark Tours,
true. But then
right?
you still have the jet in Avengers Campus that's supposed to
Oh,
be.
it's a tease. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
let's
I
hope
mean,
we
but
still get
now
it.
they push the brakes on that too. So
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, if they could think this far ahead and this potentially massive as an expansion, it gives me hope that okay, maybe they can still move forward with that other with the phase 2 for Marvel, but we don't know.
but they say 2023. That's not that far. Like if
Well,
you
what do you
think
mean?
of
Who
that
said
date,
that? That was in the announcement?
it was 2023 somewhere. I forget where I read it. It was either in the press release or on the
Wow. Yeah,
website. But
I didn't hear any dates for that. I just
2023 was the potential start date or the potential like where they
that
would like
sounds
to
like
begin.
trying when they're trying to get people excited, they want people to know that this isn't 10 or 15 years from
But I
now.
think that says
Elements.
something, don't you think? I
Yeah.
mean, because I would believe you if you showed us all that and you said this is happening over the next 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
I'd say that's believable. Like,
Yeah.
look at how long it took for
We'll
us to
take our
transform
grandkids.
parts of DCA, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and we're happy with it now. But I mean, that took
Finally.
a while.
Yeah.
But if you were to say that, I would have totally believed you. But the
Mhm.
fact that you're saying like you're throwing out things like 2023, it's like, holy crap, like
Right,
that's
right.
not that far.
Well, it fuels the flames of excitement, and it becomes more contagious because it's the near future now. It's not, maybe someday.
By the way, I don't want anybody commenting or talking about don't get too excited. Like, I'm a very excitable person. I get excited about everything. So I'm
What's
not
not to get
admitting it. I
excited
know that
about?
this isn't going to be anything set in stone, but I feel like it's fun to get excited about this type of stuff. And seriously, if there was ever a time we needed things to be excited about, it's now.
Oh
So
my
let's
gosh.
just
Well
let it
said.
go.
Well said. No pun intended. Let it go. Well, I think this has been a killer first podcast. Hopefully I hit record. If not, I apologize. We'll just, we'll redo it all. Um, yeah. Where can people find you? You're all over the place, and your Instagram is amazing. But
I am.
tell us about yourself. I really did a really bad job of introducing you. I don't think I
There's
did at
really
all.
nothing to tell. I mean, that they didn't pick up on already. I'm a total Disney nerd. I grew up going to Disneyland. My grandfather, my mom, my kids have grown up going there. I basically had 4 kids in 4 years, and every kid went there like 2 weeks into being born. I just carried them around all over the parks. Um,
I have no idea
we're
why we get
local.
along then. Wow.
Yeah, we're locals. We go all the time. Yeah, my Instagram is the happiest club on earth. I started it because we were doing park drops where we were doing like little drops inside the parks and we would just give
Love
things to
that.
people because it was fun and it felt good. And
Paying
then
it
that
forward.
got to be a little too much toting 4 kids around at the same time. So I thought, well, I'll just mail it to people. Like if somebody messages me or something, I'll ask them for their address. And then that got to be too much to handle. So I started doing magic mail. So there's magic mail on my Instagram. That's really a big reason why I do my Instagram. And then I do a weekly segment on Nostalgia, the Disneyland podcast, and I do a
That's how I
weekly
met you.
segment called the Nostalgia Fast Pass. And we just go over like little snippets of the news for the past year, this whole time we've been in COVID, to kind of give you little snippets of like what's happening this week or anything big that's been released or things to look out for. And so when the parks reopen, I'm not sure how that will transition, but it will in some way. But that's it. I mean, it's a lot. It's so fun. I love doing all of this. This is like gets me going
That's
always.
awesome. Well,
Yeah,
you're really good at it. I can tell it energizes you when you do what you love.
totally. Totally.
Well, thank you for chatting with me. It's always
Of
nice to brainstorm and, try to guess what they're doing. And, like we said before, nothing is official, nothing's confirmed, but
course.
something's brewing, and it's really fun just to nerd out about it. So I will be talking
Super.
to you soon, and hope everyone dug the first podcast of Art of the Experience. We'll see how this goes. We'll see if I could do it often. We're all busy with work and kids and stuff, but there's so much to talk about, and this is a good place to do it.
Sam and I are constantly like,
yep. Well,
messaging
cool.
about it.
Well, hey, thanks everybody. I'll talk to you soon. See ya.